Definitely, yeah, I can definitely see that, which is funny. That's interesting, actually, because that, I guess, lands us on something we wanted to talk about, which is giving feedback and receiving feedback, David.
Well,
I didn't think you knew that was coming as a link then, did you?
I did not. But I suppose, feedback, and if you're getting feedback from a 13-year-old child to say how badly you're doing your job, I think, that is definitely good feedback to pay attention to. Though something tells me that they won't. So feedback then. So we've finished our game. We've slain the beast, or seduced the dragon yet again, or
depending on the group,
potentially stopped the rise of
the androids,
Bama Labadin Dong, or whatever his name is.
Yeah.
From the evil tome of Oopsie Daisy.
Yeah.
We're all packing up. We're ready to go home, and
a little bit of time pressure, maybe.
Yeah,
maybe
but we've got some feedback to give. You could go, just that was great, or you could go a little bit more formally, like one of our group members has done in the past, and actively send an anonymous survey out to people.
I think it depends on that stuff. I think it depends on your personality, right? Because I think that particular person appreciates to be able to look at data, and then pick out the path. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, and I think it's theoretically that measure of data sort of intake, and that measure of feedback should be a little less bias in regards to, like, standing in front of somebody is going to be much harder to offer proper feedback. I don't know if it does, though. I think anonymous surveys do have their space, but I think when there's only sort of 4 of you taking part, I think it's not necessarily difficult to figure out
maybe
which survey belongs to whom.
I guess it gives the player, I think the correct answer for that particular person, which they do anyway, is a hybrid.
Yeah.
Because they always want to know what people are enjoying and not, and they're very keen and very good at tailoring the campaigns or the chapters of the campaigns on what went wrong and cutting that content out of the next one, what people enjoyed, and emphasising that aspect.
Yeah.
And I think over the time that I played with the person we're thinking of, that when I left that group, it was the best version of their campaign I'd ever played in.
Yeah.
Which, it's iterative, right? So they got both. I think also if you're doing the sort of survey thing where it's anonymous, it's easier probably to share feedback on the group as well as the game. Or the GM.
And I suppose sort of when you're taking in that kind of level of data, you can still make a good kind of statistical analysis of where you're going to go next and things like that, even if it isn't necessarily as honest as it could be if it was sort of truly large numbers and a number.
Bigger sample size.
I don't think I'm going to be able to say the word anonymous.
Anonymous
anymore.
One of them, yeah.
Well, that's a word. That's a word gone from my lexicon now.
Good. Is that not what we're doing here?
So there's obviously sort of more formal things, but then there is just the after show conversation or chat. How wild as it might be, I've run a bad game. I know, you're really going to have to use your imagination here.
Yep.
My games are clearly always perfect. So I've run a bad game. How are you, or something in there wasn't sort of meeting my usual standard of excellence. How are you going to bring that to me?
Because everybody feels bad giving feedback that isn't good.
Mm-hmm.
But part of it, being able to give feedback, is, I think, actually just part of like having a healthy table and a healthy group of people, which is that you sort of bring a bit of a grown-up approach to it, even if you aren't grown-up people, even if you're just teenagers, and you make it really clear from the start of your campaign or whoever's that you're interested in feedback.
Yeah.
Or maybe you're not interested in feedback.
I mean, that's viable as well. You can just say, look, I am, for whatever reason, I don't like feedback. I will run the game. if you don't like it, don't invite me back to
or
run
maybe
another
you want
game.
maybe you want feedback if you're running a pre-written thing, or like a 4-week arc or whatever. Maybe you want your feedback in the moment in session, or maybe you want your feedback at the end of the campaign.
Yeah.
If it's a shorter campaign, right? Probably different if you're running like a longer thing. But if they're, say for example, the way you're running a game and it didn't go very well because of what didn't go well? What don't I like about it?
So this is a personal thing that I think that I don't do particularly well in some games. Sort of all pretense of arrogance aside, I think I sometimes struggle running interesting combat. I'm much more of a interactive role play with an LE, not a double L kind of person. So I know that I sometimes struggle making intriguing or interesting combat.
Okay.
Within my thing, and I'm happy for people to put forward suggestions in that.
I guess so. If that was the case, I would suggest that maybe combat felt easy, maybe, or like the balance of it. Like I really enjoyed the session. Thank you for running that. I guess the one thing I'd say about it is when we had that fight, it felt like we were in a pretty comfortable place, and if we were fighting Gonk on the street, the Mook, the whatever, then that's accurate because that's cannon fodder, yeah? But if we're not, then there should be a little bit of jeopardy, right? So then if I was to, that's probably what I would say.
Yeah.
And then a post-session away from people, if you were then to say something like, okay, that was interesting what you said, what could I do? Then I might suggest you have like a rollable critical injury table. That almost takes the weight away from you. And you say, roll D100, D66, D whatever. They're everywhere, right?
So offering productive criticism as opposed to just, or offering productive suggestions.
I think it's just, when you're running a game, there's an element of being quite exposed.
Yeah.
You expose your ego a little bit, right? And you do funny voices or not funny voices, and you've invested quite a lot of time to get it to this point, because even if you're running pre-gen, you've read a rule book that's how long, you've gone through this booklet, whatever, or you've used your creative juices to come up with something that's not pre-generated or pre-written. Sorry, I think it's a bit of a you're stood on the stage and you don't always want to hear the crowd say something. Yeah. So you have to be careful with how you deliver it, particularly immediately afterwards, because it can feel a little bit like rug being pulled.
Yeah, I think sometimes as well, if you've run a game that isn't the best game you could have done, and sometimes the criticism doesn't need to be said or shared in that moment. When it comes to criticism or feedback, rather, not necessarily just, it doesn't necessarily have to be negative. We are taking a negative spin on it, but it could also be positive feedback. It doesn't always have to be.
I think negative is harder to give, right?
Yeah, positive feedback. I mean, I struggle with positive feedback.
Because you can't take a compliment.
Yeah, simply because I'm a garbage human and don't deserve them.
Look at what you just did. You've perfectly demonstrated why you can't take a compliment.
So, maybe in the sort of back half of this, we do need to speak a little bit more about the ability to accept positive feedback.
Yeah.
Or maybe I just need to talk that through with my therapist in private. But I think so. The nature is, I think, here that we're going to sort of perhaps focus on the more negative side of feedback to start with, at least, just simply because that, like I say, often that can be the hardest to take.
Yeah.
And I think it's okay, especially if you're a GM and you might be new to it, or you might sort of it might not be the easiest thing for you to do. Is you might say, I'm happy to receive feedback in private, or can we not, or you might say, actually, I'm really not happy to receive feedback at all. This is, and I think, if somebody came into our group, it was their first time running anything, or
just not like,
but if the first time running stuff for us, I think understanding that from our perspective is important as well. Like I don't necessarily want to say, because it feels like a cop out to say read the room and wait. It depends on your channel table. It depends on the people that you're talking to. It depends on who's in there. Like, in some ways, you are probably going to know what that situation requires. However, unfortunately, and being neurodivergent myself, sometimes that doesn't happen.
Yeah, some people aren't, neurodivergent or not. Some people aren't maybe as equipped to pick up on the cues and the vibe. You know what I mean? And actually, for some people, turning up and running the game is the massive step, and feedback might just put them back in a box that they worked very hard to come out of. And if that is the case, then and you're a player at that table, the first point of call is let this person go. Back it, run what the vibe is. I guess I'm talking from a shorter campaign arc, because typically we would play like a 6 to 8 week campaign arc. So if it's not something that a setting or whatever that you're particularly enjoying, you've only got 6 to 8 weeks of exploring it, and you find the bits in it that you do enjoy. Like maybe there's a particular mechanic, or your character, or relationships, or something. But I'll happily sacrifice a 6 to 8 week period to encourage somebody to come out of their box, maybe, just become more confident in. And it might be that they're still not happy to get feedback afterwards. But there's value in that. I guess what we're really talking about is if there's something that you want to say, something
that's going to sort of draw you out of the game,
affected you enough basis, that you're going, I would much rather this was the case.
So I'm particularly put in mind of something. So we played a game with a person that wasn't hugely great at receiving feedback within what they were doing, and it was a space game. I remember that. Sorry, this is horrendous of me. Coriolis
Coriolis, Free League, yeah. The third,
is that Free League as well?
Horizon, yeah.
Is that the one that's sort of
Arabian Nights in space?
Yes.
Yeah.
So they were running that, and I didn't know the sort of system well enough, because I felt that they weren't perhaps running it
as intended.
Yeah. Because I think I worked out. So I was the engineer of the ship, and I worked out that.
Were you Scottish?
No. Okay. I didn't play that particular. What did I?
Trope.
I might have played that trope. No, I got all the tropes out early.
Yes,
I think
that's good.
I think, but yeah. So when I worked out the way that it was presented by him was that there was about a 37% chance that I could keep that ship flying and not exploding at any given moment.
Tough roll.
But bearing in mind that I'd put my abilities all in the system that allowed me to do that.
Yeah.
So that speccing my character to be the person that kept the ship flying, and having a 30% or 37% chance of doing that, struck me as there probably is something wrong here. Because if somebody told you that they were going to drive you home from work and there was a 30% chance that they could do it safely, you would say no thank you.
But yeah, I think you don't want to be the combat guy who whiffs 2/3 of the time.
So
feel bad, right?
My understanding was that this was probably a fault in how the game was being presented, because I think
you're pretty tight on that sort of stuff.
So, and I think Coriolis is quite not a hugely popular, but I think it's popular enough that if they had such a massive issue with it, that it would have been.
It's Mutiny Year Zero. It's a setting, going off topic, that really interests me, because I think it's a really fun. It's kind of Mass Effect-y. In terms of the technology, and the cultural mixes in there, but it's not one that I've run or played in. But anyway,
so the reason that we're playing it is because the setting appealed to us so much. The idea of being the sort of swashbuckly space crew is always fun. I think when I heard it, I kind of read it as Firefly, but with a South Asian influence over an East Asian influence. is how I ended up sort of reading it.
They re-released it, or there's an updated version of it, which I think is more... I think they changed the cultural stuff, and I think they changed... I don't know. I'm sure it's a bit more sub-Saharan African now, or it was North African and now it's more Asian, or like the cultural piece I think changed slightly because they just to keep it fresh, I guess.
So, but the system, or rather the setting was fabulous. But going back into the idea of feedback, when I brought the
percentage of success
that up with the person running it, he immediately felt attacked. He immediately felt that I was sort of being hostile, and he wasn't prepared to sort of listen to any level of criticism on that, which probably you disengaged. Yeah, and that tends to be what happens with me. And I know it's one of my kind of faults in the sort of playing space in general. But if I'm in a place, I don't know about that. I think if anybody was to point that out and it's received like that, I think there's a social pressure from the rest of the table that probably says get back in your box. Yeah, I think most people would find themselves doing that in that example. Yeah, I think generally speaking, if I find I have no agency in a game, then I disengage. If the person who's running it is telling a good enough story, then I might stick around to hear the end of the story. But ultimately, the difference between a novel and a roleplay game is that I get to have agency within the roleplay game. Yeah. So, but he wasn't prepared to go in, and it soured the table, and he left the group shortly after. Well, that's true. It is, outside of that moment, a decent chap all round. That inability to accept feedback, I think, can, especially if somebody within your table is not having a good time. Ultimately, my thought process is the point of being there is to have a good time and tell a story. If that's not happening, somebody somewhere is doing something wrong. It might be that me, as a player, has just got the complete wrong end of the stick of how to run something, and I'm the one at fault, and I'm more than happy. And as well, we're talking about sort of feedback in regards to GMs receiving the feedback, but player feedback is also equally as important. That's a tricky one as well. That is a tricky one. It's all tricky. It is because we don't inherently like being conflict. Unless it's within the bounds of a good roleplay game. But unfortunately, I don't have access to magic spells in real life. So until that happens, I'm going to avoid conflict. I think feedback it should be worked on, right? Not in terms of what the feedback is, but in terms of the process. In the ideal world, you've got a table that's been together for a while. Whether you like to play shorter arcs or longer arcs, you should create, once you've had a table that's been together for a while and there's behaviours that you choose that you don't accept, and as a group you manage those behaviours when they come up, and maybe that means that in the first year you cycle through a couple of people until you get pretty tight in with a core group. Then you become comfortable to a level that you can hear that feedback and know it's not a personal attack, and the feedback is actually there to help you improve or help that session go from a 7 to an 8 or a 6 to a 7, and it's to benefit everybody involved. And once you hit that sweet spot, because you've had good feedback, because we haven't spoken about that piece either, if we're giving feedback, it needs to be thought out, then you're in like a really happy spot. That's like the honey, what is it? Goldilocks zone. That's the Goldilocks zone, right? Feedback might still be uncomfortable, probably is, because maybe you were vibing slightly differently and you thought you nailed it, or what's often harder is maybe you thought the session was terrible and people say it was good, because then you go, why are these people lying to me? Both of those places can exist. So because we do con games as well, convention games, it might be worth sort of speaking about feedback within the convention setting, not way just harder. I think so too. I think when the people on your table are strangers, receiving honest feedback, I'm almost inclined to have my advice on that front be, don't worry about it.
I think for the most part that's probably true, because the feedback you get from strangers will be, yeah, great, let's just get this over with at the end of the game, right? Like, we're done now. Not because they don't want to hang out with you, but because there's no motivation for them to give you valuable feedback.
No.
If you're awkward about it, it's just a bit weird. Like, you can ask for it, and generally speaking, what you'll get is, yeah, good game, really good game, or whatever. But you might not get much more out of that situation.
If you're really lucky and in a position to do so, you might get a bit of feedback via online sources where people are sort of speaking about how much they enjoyed your game or things like that, which is always quite nice because, like you say, positive feedback from the people at the con, I think, is also, for me as somebody that doesn't sort of accept positive feedback hugely well, I much prefer getting a positive review from a stranger to a friend.
Yeah,
because I can convince myself that, if you say, oh, you did a really good job,
true, I
can convince myself that, of course, Tom's going to say that because he wants to maintain our friendship. So he's invested in, I don't necessarily ask why you want to maintain our friendship,
probably best not to as well.
and conclude that perhaps it might be because you really enjoy playing games with me. That doesn't make sense. But
frankly,
I
it's
just
your biscuit game. Your biscuit game is good.
I do bring good biscuits. You came a little later within the group and you avoided my baking phase, which was apparently quite good. My oven is terrible. I don't know, like the oven that I got at the moment, it fires directly from the bottom, which just immediately eviscerates anything anything from directly below, and you get like raw. You try and cook biscuits; they're raw on the top and like charred at the bottom. It's terrible. The only thing that it can cook well is chips and pizza.
Well, that's all you need.
Well, this is true.
That's all I need.
From a con point of view, my inclination or my advice, I think, and feel free to sort of disagree, is don't worry about feedback. Because one way or another, there's not going to, like you said before, there's not going to be the value there in it.
Yeah, I agree.
Because it's either going to be platitude at the table. However, if you do get significantly...
if you get someone telling you something's wrong at a con game, you probably should listen a little bit.
Yeah, if the organisers step you to one side and go, look.
The shouting and the Harry Potter... paper fire one thing effect wasn't very welcome in the library.
I mean, I've got some feedback from organisers before about my propensity towards loud, presentation and things like that.
Yeah,
which I've apologised for, and I do try and sort of
fuck them.
I don't try and do that.
Sometimes you have to be loud.
I think
sometimes you shouldn't be, but there are moments when you should be loud. So
it never ceases to amaze me the occasional dirty looks that you'll get from other people at the table because your table is having such a good time.
Yes,
and you're getting dirty looks from other people, and you're like, why are we here aside from to have fun? And then you're sort of on a table where some other table next to you is having loads of fun and being really loud so you can't hear anything, and you can make sure you give them a dirty look.
Yeah. It's the joys of convention gaming.
Yes, there's never enough space. There's always heaters rattling overhead, making it hard to hear anybody, and you'll invariably lose dice. I'm pretty sure they just sweep up the floor and then stick it on the dice store. But we'll talk about cons another time, I'm sure. So
what have we covered?
I'm not entirely convinced that we've covered much, but that's the beauty of the system, Tom, is that we get to have a chat about stuff
in the pub,
and slowly imbibe way too much in the way of fermented liquids and ramble. And hopefully somebody out there is willing to listen to those inherent.
Maybe they're only listening to give us some horrible feedback at the end.
Yes. If you didn't like this particular podcast, please feel free to leave feedback in the comments.
Yeah.
Leave a like or a dislike. Both help the algorithm.
And if you want to see the improvement arc, try subscribe it. I've got one before we wrap it.
Okay. Yeah.
What's the most devastating bit of feedback to receive, either that you have or fictitiously? What's the worst as a GM running the game? If someone gives you feedback, what impacts you the most?
Oh, that is a good one. I think that I didn't understand what was going on. I think is the worst thing for me, because as I say, I lean more towards storytelling than I do system. If the system doesn't work, I can blame other people. But obviously, if people don't know what the story is that we're telling, then I feel I failed.
Yeah.
If they don't know what was going on, some people, are just there for the ride. They like the ambience and that kind of stuff. But if somebody that I know comes to me and says, I didn't know what was happening, then I feel I failed as a storyteller.
Yeah, I guess.
How about yourself? What would be your...
Mishandling death, rolling important roles behind a GM screen, or people feeling cheated if their character dies.
Yes.
I've had that feedback from a trusted player.
Was it one of my many characters that you killed?
You did all that. We had
those deaths were perfectly justified.
We had a game of Dragonbane, and David had more characters than sessions. One of whom was a necromancer and wouldn't piss off at the end of it. He just kept turning up as a
resurrected all my
ghost.
other characters.
Never give your group a skeleton head that can talk, because a dead necromancer will find its way to it and just start talking. Action economy doesn't work if you have two characters, David. I don't care if you have arms or not. Can I try social combat? No, you can't. You don't have any muscles on your head. Mishandling death. So, if someone's really close to dying, then as a GM, often people appreciate those roles being done in front of the GM screen because it creates attention. And if there's any kind of disconnect and people feel cheated about their character dying, then you have to understand people have invested time in it. And emotion, and they've tried to craft something with you as part of a team and with the table, and losing that in a way which is perceived to be not good or unfair or without warning means that I haven't communicated, like you're saying, I guess, that I've failed to communicate the jeopardy here.
Yeah.
Or that because I rolled behind the screen, you can fluff rolls, right?
So I'll tell you what I'll do then. Because you seem like that's really important to you. How about I go get another round in and we can come back and we can talk about death proper?
I like it.
Okay. I'll get some crisps as well.